of all, I'd like to say hello to all of my many friends, also to my many enemies and Facebook friends and YouTube subscribers. Once again, this is Roosevelt with another episode of Roosevelt Sounds Off. And on this evening, or this morning, or this afternoon, whenever you happen to be watching this video, I want to talk about something that I have never spoken about publicly before. And this might be kind of controversial to some people, but I'm hoping and praying that you all who are watching bear with me in talking about this subject. This subject was brought to my attention earlier this afternoon by a good friend of mine, and she asked me, did I know anything about a local church here in Chicago that actually excommunicated a lady, all because I guess the lady was gay and she married her same-sex partner. And I said, no, I didn't know about this story. So she took me to YouTube, and I looked it up, and I am going to play the clip in a minute, and this falls under fair use. But I have never ever in my 5 years of being on YouTube ever spoken about any kind of gay and lesbian issues, because I know that this is a very hot topic, and I know this is something that is very controversial no matter what kind of a side of the issue that you fall on, whether you're for or against. It's always people who are going to have something to say either way. But basically the backstory is there's a lady who is nameless because I watched the news article. I'm going to play that for you in a second. She was not identified, and she married her same-sex partner. And I guess it got brought to the attention of the pastor of one of our local mega churches here in Chicago, the Apostolic Church of God, which is pastored by Bishop Brian Brazier. And for all of you all who don't know, he is the son of the late Bishop Arthur Brazier, who had started Apostolic Church of God here in Chicago years ago. And he had excommunicated her or revoked her membership only because she married a woman. So right now I'm going to play you some of this news footage, and then I'm going to come back to you with the rest of my commentary. Like I said, this is something that's very controversial, and after doing a lot of thinking, a lot of soul searching about this particular topic, because I've never ever explored this before, because talking about, you know, ratchet women or ratchet men, and talking about police brutality, police corruption, even talking about government, it's a whole lot different than covering this issue, because this is a very, very tough issue. And one thing I would never want to get accused of, and I gotta say from the very beginning, is putting hate speech over the internet, because truly and really, I don't hate anyone. You know, I don't even hate corrupt police officers who do things and plant evidence, and, you know, who beat people, who've even shot people, you know, for no reason, even people who've been unarmed for no reason. Only thing I just wish, a whole lot of times when it comes down to police or policing, is that I wish that things or the system itself would change. So therefore, with some of my opinions, in being raised in the church, and, you know, being taught a certain way about lesbianism and homosexuality, I don't hate people who practice this kind of lifestyle at all. I just believe that it's something that is also spoken against in the Bible, and I know at that point only God can judge that kind of behavior. So I don't hate anybody, so I don't ever want anybody to think that I'm putting out hate speech over YouTube. That's not what's going on. I'm just giving my particular viewpoint of this story, and I hope that everybody listens all the way through, because I think you might be a little bit surprised as to what I have to say and my take on it concerning this lady, and concerning this church and this pastor. So let me cut to this news footage. I'm going to play you this newscast, and I'm going to come back with the rest of my commentary.
The Southside Church, with a history of civil rights activism, is now at the center of controversy after the pastor took away the membership of a gay parishioner after she married her partner. CBS 2's Sandra Torres talked to both the woman and the pastor about the decision.
We are the church.
Outside of the Apostolic Church of God in Woodlawn,
We are the church.
a group of LGBT activists came together to speak out, upset that a longtime church parishioner lost her membership after marrying her female partner.
Her grandmother was a member, her mother was a member, and she was a member for 30 years. All of this ended last week because she made the decision to marry her partner.
The woman, who asked to remain anonymous, told me via telephone she felt hurt after she says, quote, Pastor Byron Brazier publicly shamed me and humiliated me during last Sunday's sermon.
A prominent member of this church married a woman of the same sex.
That sermon was posted on Facebook, but later removed. The group Sheik's Chicks Social recorded it.
We just felt it was embarrassing to the member.
Maxwell Brown helped organize today's protest.
This cannot be tolerated. Do not discriminate against anyone, because God loves all people, and love is love.
The Apostolic Church of God was founded in Chicago 85 years ago. Today it has 20,000 members and a long history of civil rights activism. Barack Obama delivered a speech there during his 2008 presidential campaign. And this morning, Pastor Brazier acknowledged the protest.
Now, we recognize that there are those in this country who have different beliefs. There are those that came to protest. But we came to worship.
And Pastor Brazier also told the congregation today that this woman is welcome to visit the church at any time, even though she will no longer be a member. And to that, the woman said, no thanks. Live in the newsroom, Sandra Torres, CBS 2 News. Jim, Mike.
Thank you, Sandra.
Okay, now you've just seen the news footage, and with the news here in Chicago, the channel that's courtesy of Channel 2 News here in Chicago had to say, and like I said, that's fair use. Hopefully you get it. So let's dive into this. Like I said from the beginning, that I don't hate anybody. I just disagree with people. You know, sometimes I can just disagree with people's lifestyle in the way that they go about doing things. Now, the way I was taught in my household, in my family, we were always taught that homosexuality was wrong, because I was raised in a Christian family. For all of y'all who don't know, come from a family full of ministers and evangelists and that kind of thing. And so I was always raised that it was wrong, and I was always taught that it does say in the scriptures that if a man lies with man like he would lie with a woman, or if a woman lies with woman like she would lie with mankind, then both are, guilty of that kind of a sin, and they're, subject to death, or worthy of death. I think that's what the book of Leviticus says. And it talked about in the book of Galatians, and I believe that's chapter 5, beginning at verse 19. It deals and talks about the sins of the flesh, which are stuff like fornication, uncleanliness, adultery, idolatry, effeminate. Effeminate means a man who behaves and acts like a woman. And it talks about drunkards and people who envy and strife and wrath and heresies. And it says that they who do such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. That's what the word of God says. But looking at it from the other side, and looking at it from the natural side too, I believe that this particular church, Apostolic Church of God, tell you the truth, and I'm just going to come out and just say it, I have seen this church, been watching this church on TV for, some years sometimes. Not as much as I used to, but I know I did when Bishop Brazier was alive, and a little bit under Byron Brazier. And I think I probably visited like one time, and I believe it was a couple of summers ago, when one classmate of mine, who I graduated from high school with back in '93, he passed away, and he was a member of that church. So it did go to a funeral there. But about this church, Apostolic Church of God here in Chicago. Now, for many of y'all who don't know church or church protocol or church organization, that particular church works under an organization called PAW, which stands for Pentecostal Assemblies of the World. In Pentecostal Assemblies of the World, it's like an apostolic or Pentecostal or sanctified denomination, but it's also a very, very liberal sanctified denomination, meaning that they don't cover or talk against or preach against certain kinds of sins like other denominations of apostolic or sanctified churches, such as Church of God, Holiness in Christ, which I was once a part of, and then another apostolic organization called PCAF, which PCAF stands for Pentecostal Churches of the Apostolic Faith, which are much more stricter. You know, where they preach against all of that. PAW is always very, very liberal. So PAW, I mean, it's very well known that some of them, those kind of churches, they actually have like gay men in their choirs and all of this other kind of stuff. And I don't believe that a PAW church, like an Apostolic Church of God of Chicago, can go and kick somebody out all because they chose to get married to somebody who I guess that they think that or found that they loved, when they're not preaching against the whole sin of homosexuality and lesbianism itself, but only decide to come after this young lady all because she chose to get married. To me, if you're going to talk about or go against this whole thing because somebody decided to get married to their same-sex partner, why not preach against same-sex relationships altogether? I have not heard any kind of a sermon over the pulpit of Apostolic Faith churches or any of the PAW churches regarding this particular sin, but when somebody decides to go and get married, then all of a sudden it's like a big deal now. So you can't go and clamp down on one thing when you have not, as a church organization of PAW, condemned the whole act to begin with. Therefore, this lady is something by the church not condemning this act, or not. The pastors don't have anything to say about this. By the pastors not saying anything about the act of lesbianism and homosexuality, hey, you never know. She probably thought it was okay to do this kind of stuff and be this kind of way. But when she took it further to take that next step and actually go and get married to this woman, now all of a sudden the pastor has something to say. And then the pastor can't talk about this kind of sin or any other kind of sin until the church itself, meaning Apostolic Church of God, actually deals with its own sin. And what I mean by its own sin, it falls under the category to me. And for many of y'all who've been following me for some months or for some years, know that last year I did a program about the black church and how I do not understand why so many black churches follow up and kiss up behind certain politicians. It is a known fact here in the city of Chicago that certain churches, including this one right here, Apostolic Church of God, kisses up behind certain politicians. Brazier Sr., the late Bishop Arthur Brazier, was a good friend and close to Mayor Richard Daley, who made laws and made policies that were destructive to black community within this city. But yet, he and several other pastors here in the city of Chicago were members of Mayor Daley's pastoral advisory board. It's a known fact, even right this second, that Bishop Brazier Jr., Byron T. Brazier, is close with Mayor Rahm Emanuel, who is now also, now that he is in office as mayor, is making disastrous policies towards the black and Latin community here in the city of Chicago, hurting the same kind of people that are sitting in his pulpits every single week. So I don't think the Apostolic Church of God, Bishop Byron T. Brazier, or anyone can judge this woman on her sin until the church itself and the church organization, the PAW, deal with their sin. Because if you look at it, I I know some people, like I heard one guy something on Facebook say tonight, that he thinks that sin is sin. No, sometimes I don't think that sin is always sin. I believe it's some sins that are greater than others. And it did speak in the Bible that if a man lay with another man, it's an abomination. Meaning the worst kind of a thing that you ever could do. But at the same time, like I said, we not need to throw stones if we live in a glass house. Apostolic Church of God and Bishop Byron T. Brazier, they're living in a glass house, but yet choosing to throw stones at this lady for her sin. And the church organization itself has never talked about this, never preached against this. And plus, you also got to deal with in Apostolic Church of God, what other kinds of sins that might be going on in the church. What about the people who are fornicating? What about the people who are committing adultery? What about the people who are even cussing? What about the people who are getting drunk? I mean, I dated a woman one time from Apostolic Church of God. She would smoke, drink, and cuss and do all kinds of stuff. I know several people from that church or something. In that church, I'm not talking about any other, in that church, and I know under Bishop Brazier Sr., he taught that we were sinners saved by grace. I don't believe that when you get saved and when you experience Jesus, that you are still a sinner saved by grace. Because it says someplace in the Bible that when we were sinners, meaning past tense, or it's another one that said in the Bible, such were some of you. If anybody went to school and got half a stupid brain up in your head, you would understand the word is past tense. To me, you're no longer a sinner when you have experienced Jesus. Now, as believers, do we sin? Do we make mistakes? Is it stuff that we ignorantly do? Oh, sure. But at the same time, I believe that if it's something that you ignorantly do or don't know of or have no knowledge of, I believe that the blood of Jesus can cover that. But when you know to do right and you're still doing wrong, it also says that he who knows to do good and who doesn't do it, to him and only him, it's sin. So this is the teaching of that church, that we're all sinners saved by grace. So to Bishop Brazier, one sin shouldn't be worse than the other. Like I said, I think that they need to clean around their own front door and deal with other things and actually preach in sin, against sin in general. And I mean, deal with all of it instead of dealing with one lady and her sin and her behavior. And the way it was done, it was just so badly. I don't think if I had to excommunicate somebody as a pastor, I don't think I ever would have talked about it over the pulpit and on a broadcast, and it was on Facebook where the whole world could actually hear. I think that's something I would have pulled her into my office and told her. That's something that would have remained in private. I don't think I ever would have said it. So I think that that's where Bishop Brazier also made a mistake. So that is my little take on it, that I think that this church needs to sweep around its own front door before it talks about anybody else. PAW actually needs to sweep around its own front door and not just deal with the sin of lesbianism, homosexuality. If you're going to talk about something, preach against all sin, which this church or church organization does not do. And I want everybody to forget in closing that no matter what kind of sin or predicament that somebody's in, don't forget what Jesus said in the New Testament, that no matter what he tells us to do or no matter what he tells us not to do, even he said himself, the greatest commandment of all is to love. That's the greatest commandment of all. So I wanted to leave you all with that, my take on this thing. If anybody liked this video, be sure to give me a thumbs up and be sure to share and subscribe. Hopefully I'll see everybody on the next video. Peace and blessings to all.